Okay, Bitcoin, the reserve. Supposedly there is disappointment that we're not going to be buying Bitcoin outright using taxpayer dollars. But if we can do it in a revenue neutral way, we would. Number one, were you a proponent for the reserve? And two, is there a way to buy Bitcoin, not just acquire it through, I don't know, however we've gotten these $17 billion worth at this point?
Yeah, so Joe, I am a big proponent of the U.S. taking the worldwide lead in crypto. I think we have to bring it onshore and they use our best practices and regulation. I think that the Bitcoin reserve, before you can accumulate it, you have to stop selling it. So what we have now is from a seized asset pool, and I wasn't there when it happened, but I believe what happened was about 500 million of Bitcoin was seized, half of it was sold, and what we have now that, say it's over 10 billion, 10, 12 billion, that's all through appreciation. So the first thing to do is to stop the selling. So we are going to, after the victims are paid and all of that, any seized assets will go into this reserve, and then we'll see what the way forward is for more acquisitions for the reserves. And we're starting with Bitcoin, but it's an overall crypto reserve.
Right. So how do you think about buying, though? And how should taxpayers think about that? Because effectively we'll be levering ourselves to some degree, given that we don't have a surplus of money right now to make these investments.
Yeah, so that's why the first step is to stop selling, and then we're going to put a plan in place from there. So we're having this crypto summit. I'm going back to Washington this afternoon, and then we'll talk about the way forward.
Katie, I wanted to ask you about Bitcoin and what the chart tells you about price action there. I mean, he did it. They did an executive order creating the strategic crypto reserve. Maybe there's some disappointment, but they're not going to be buying more crypto, that they're using what they've basically seized from criminal entities. But it is interesting that Bitcoin is not moving that much. It's lower on the announcement of that. I guess a lot of that was baked in. What does it tell you about where it goes?
It's a fairly muted reaction for sure, but we have such bearish sentiment right now around equities, so maybe that's affecting all risk assets. So that could be part of the influence there. But if you look at the chart, Bitcoin still is in a long-term uptrend. That long-term uptrend is at risk this month of an overbought downturn. That would tell us at least it's going to assume a more gradual slope. It's been quite steep, as you know, or perhaps get into a trading range, which is our view for the broader equity market. So we think a range is possible. And more recently, of course, we had a recent breakdown from a 3-month or 4-month range in Bitcoin that we see as an intermediate term setback. For those that are looking to add exposure, we're just saying wait. And for those that are long-term holders, we just say, well, if it's okay, it probably will go against you for a little bit, but you can hold through that.
And I think crypto, I think, is going to be the big standout within technology. And I think that will continue to. There's a lot of headlines out there about the executive order for the Bitcoin reserve not being what people expected. But I think if you read through it carefully, it's much better than expected. So we think that could be an outperformer as we look into 2025 and we navigate this volatility short term with broader tech within the NASDAQ.
Yeah, and certainly I think, you have this crypto summit that's going on too, and expectations that maybe we're going to get some more comments about this from President Trump as the afternoon unfolds. But James, I am curious, just on the last point you made, why is Bitcoin down so much despite the fact that everybody has been, in that industry, in that asset class, has been pushing for this for so long?
Yeah, there's a lot of new money that came into it over the last couple of months. If you looked at the net sellers over the last month, where it came back to below 80, over 50% of those were buyers that had bought within the last month. So the base who believes in Bitcoin continues to be very sticky. What's coming out of the White House continues to be very impressive as it relates to the crypto policy. And I think we have support in Congress to get something going later this year. So I think the sky is very high for Bitcoin. So we continue to be strong there. But when we think about our portfolio, I do think you have to operate as 50-50. You got to keep the hedges on, because right now, is what you're seeing in the market could very well be a head fake.
Launched Bitcoin at about $88,000 right now. That's well off its post-election highs in hopes that the Trump administration would support cryptocurrencies. It's off the lows of earlier this week, too, though. A crypto summit is taking place at the White House this afternoon, and the president expected to speak later. But there is some disappointment that what might actually happen is short of what the crypto community was hoping for. Mackenzie Sagalos is here with us on set. She joins us now with more. Mackenzie.
Hey, Morgan. So investors were not impressed with the president's Bitcoin reserve order, despite it being a big win for the industry. Markets sold off on the news with altcoins like Ether, Solana, and XRP leading losses overnight. Now, those tokens were recently promoted by Trump on Truth Social, but none are mentioned in the EO. Instead, it seems they're getting shuffled into a separate stockpile for orderly management. But the main concern here is that the order stopped short of any immediate government Bitcoin buying strategy. Instead, the U.S. will only hold on to seized tokens, meaning that no taxpayer dollars are going toward new purchases. That is a letdown for investors who were hoping for real federal demand. Now, that said, we just heard from White House AI and crypto czar David Sachs, who hinted at a possible Bitcoin buying plan only under budget-neutral conditions. Take a listen.
If the Secretary of the Treasury or the Secretary of Commerce can come up with a budget-neutral way to acquire more, then they are authorized. They don't have to, but they're authorized to develop those strategies.
Now, all eyes are on the first ever White House Crypto Summit, where Trump is set to speak shortly to a room filled with industry heavyweights, including Brian Armstrong, Vlad Tenev, and Michael Saylor. Some are pushing for stablecoin policy, while others see crypto's future in tokenizing private markets and putting trillions in equity on-chain.
My only question about tokenizing private markets is, what is tokenizing private markets? What does that mean?
Well, this is actually something that Vlad Tenev has been pushing for quite a while now, because there is an appetite with Robinhood's customers, which essentially is everyday customers. Because of SEC rules limiting private markets to accredited investors, they can't get exposure to a SpaceX or to a Stripe, for example. And so by putting that on chain, which would require some sort of congressional adjustment, something in a market infrastructure bill, they would finally be able to get that, democratize the private markets.
Very quickly, do we know how many seized tokens the U.S. has or has been seizing?
It's funny that you asked that, because David Sachs mentioned the fact that we need to do some due diligence, some accounting. And so the estimate is 200,000 tokens, which would put it at roughly $17 billion. But one of the top priorities of this working...
You know who Ross Ulbricht was? No, I'm serious. Silk Road, he's in prison, he's being pardoned.
Yeah.
Like, where's that money? Where's all... Ross Ulbricht would be like one of the... I mean, I'm not justifying what he did. Silk Road, selling drugs, guns, weapons. You could buy a bazooka. But that's like hundreds of billions of Bitcoin, I think, nowadays.
And the U.S. government did seize a large stash of Bitcoin from Silk Road, which they have since liquidated.
Okay.
And part of the argument of this administration is, why didn't we hold on to it? Because it's appreciated in value. We've lost billions of dollars because of premature sales. Another, and I will say this.
Just another great decision by the brain trust in Washington.
Yeah, well, it seems to be.
I said it. You can just nod. It's all fine.
Meantime, President Trump is speaking at the White House Digital Asset Summit right now after moving to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. CNBC's Mackenzie Sagalos joins us with the latest. Mackenzie.
Hey, Morgan. So the president just wrapped up comments at the White House Crypto Summit, laying out his plan for the strategic Bitcoin reserve and crypto stockpile that he just set into motion. Already, we're seeing crypto prices start to recover after what's been a rough 24 hours of trade in the wake of what should have been good news for the industry. The president saying that the federal government is already among one of the world's largest holders in the world, with its $17 billion worth of Bitcoin on the books. He also talked about the Biden administration prematurely selling billions of dollars worth of crypto. Now, Trump says that the Treasury and Commerce secretaries will explore new pathways to accumulate new Bitcoin holdings at no cost to taxpayers. And he's looking at how to transfer those coins to the Treasury and deciding on a custody partner. Coinbase is among a larger group of crypto proxy stocks, ending the day higher. And really, that's the big question here. Will the administration roll out a budget-neutral buying strategy, which is the catalyst that the market really wants to see? Also in the room are SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce and the acting chair of the CFTC, along with his cabinet, what really is a show force in favor of the industry.
And this is fascinating to me, because budget neutral is a loaded word in Washington that has a lot of policy implications to it. And if you're going to start actually actively buying Bitcoin, It seems like you need to get lawmakers in Congress on board to be able to do so. I don't know how much, insight you have into that. But one of the things that I find super fascinating, and you and I were talking about this on Power Lunch, is if you're just talking about what the U.S. government already has potentially right now, if it's something like $17 billion, just to put it in context, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is at about $22-23 billion in assets and where they're valued.
Well, to your earlier point, the Trump team has been working with Senator Cynthia Lummis, who last year brought forward a Bitcoin buying bill, an acquisition strategy of purchasing 1 million Bitcoin over the course of 5 years. There's, certainly momentum in that direction that she might bring a similar bill forward. But in terms of looking at just the holdings that are already in place, I was speaking with Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, and it's his sense that, we would see the G20, many of those members follow suit, because this is like a very tremendous stockpile just by virtue of the tokens that have already been seized and are on the U.S. on the books of the government.
Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.